Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Grants Panel on Tuesday, the 26th of January at 4 p.m. We have a number of officers of the Council joining us, and I will call the roll call for members of the panel. And please, if you could answer present when I call your name. Councillor Belsey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hillier.
Present.
And Councillor Webster, I'm present. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Franca Currell, please, to provide an explanation of the virtual meetings, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Regulations have been introduced to enable the Council to hold its meetings to include those participants to attend remotely. The following procedure will apply to this meeting. During the meeting, all participants will be in control of their own microphones. You should set your microphones to mute until such time as the Chairman invites you to speak. If you wish to speak, you should indicate by activating the raise hand function found in your participants list. Please be patient. The Chairman will know that you've indicated a wish to speak and will get around to all members and officers. The Chairman has absolute discretion as to the order in which he invites participants to speak. When the Chairman indicates you can speak, you must unmute your microphone. Once you've finished speaking, you will need to mute yourself again, and please remember to lower your raised hand if you've used it. If you have a declaration of interest at this meeting, this means you have to leave the meeting. Please indicate this when the Chairman asks. You will be placed in a holding place before the start of the relevant item, where you will be unable to be heard or able to hear the meeting discussing the item. Once the item is finished, you will be returned to the meeting. Voting during the meeting will be via an e-vote. On Zoom, you will vote for or against a recommendation by either selecting the yes or no button. If you wish to abstain, please don't choose any of the propositions. In other words, do nothing. Do not clear your vote once cast, and please use that raised hand function to indicate that you have voted. The outcome of the vote will be reported at the meeting once checks have been made. The usual procedure rules for debates apply to this meeting, and the Chairman has absolute discretion. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes the virtual meeting explanation.
Thank you, Franca. Item 2 on the agenda is to note substitutes in accordance with Procedure Rule 4. There are none, and item 3 is to receive apologies for absence. As we're all present, there are no apologies. Item 4 is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Colleagues, do you have anything to declare? Councillor Hillier, are you shaking your head in denial?
Not at all. I have my hand raised.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
No, not at all. As ever, this is difficult with us because obviously we have so many links with the community. I should point out that I am kind of ex officio on the committee of the Burgess Hill Business Parks Association by virtue of my position as cabinet member, and was recently elected to that. And there are 2 or 3 others, the people who I know very, very well. I'm not sure that sort of prejudicial and require me to list those. I will look to Franca for guidance.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. In what capacity do you know these people? Is it through your links through being a member and the business links?
Socially.
Socially. Right, in that case, I think probably it might be prudent for you to declare an interest on those items and not participate in the discussions.
Jolly good. Then the first one is the Corona Centre. The second one is, I know the applicant is Nisanko Wicmarachi. I can't remember the name of the business. And then the final one is Kellen Collins, Mary Collins. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. When we come to those items, we'll consider those three separately, if we can, please. The next item, item 5, is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the panel held on the 14th of December. As this was a very long meeting with a very large number of applications, I'll go through the minutes page by page, and if anybody has anything to raise, would they please do so on the relevant page, and I will go through them fairly quickly, so please raise your hand if you do have an issue. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9.
Oh, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, if I may, just in relation to the resolutions, number 2, the micro business grant and tertiary ON garages. My impression was that that was going to be kind of subject to offers satisfying them on certain conditions, I think, in relation to the residence of a prospective employee, etc. Am I correct in that recollection, or and I'm just interested to know how that event went? Thank you.
Where is it in the minutes?
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, if I wasn't clear, sorry. In the resolution, page 9, number 2, that the micro business grant in Owen Garages Limited. Do you? No, so not that one. Zone of Football, number 3. Do you recall? This is one where the business operated in Brighton, and there was a suspicion that potentially the apprentice was a resident of Brighton, and so there was a certain amount of doubt as to how much direct linkage and benefiting there was to Mid Sussex, and I think we left it that officers would make inquiries, and if they were happy, the grant would go ahead. So I thought that one was kind of slightly conditional upon officers satisfying themselves. But if I've remembered that incorrectly, I'm happy to be guided. Thank you, Chairman.
No, your recollection is correct, and I believe that they've gone through the checks and it's all proceeded as was originally agreed. Okay. So I think we got to page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, and page 16. So I think anybody who is listening in on this particular meeting will see from that there were a very large number of grants approved at the last meeting. And I'm very pleased that through both government support, this council has been able to provide millions of pounds to local businesses and assisted them in keeping afloat during these difficult times. And we as a council have also been able to deliver our own grants program as well. And that brings us on to the micro business grant scheme. Before we do that, if we could just please have a raised hand indication from members in acceptance of the minutes. If you could raise your hands, please. Real or virtual, doesn't matter. Thank you. So those minutes are agreed, and if you could please append my electronic signature to those minutes. Thank you. To consider items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business, I have none. And to receive representations from members of the council on the applications, I have received none. Colleagues, have you received any? No, thank you. And that brings us on to the micro business grants, which will be introduced by William Hawkins. And I'm also very pleased to welcome Sally Blomfield, Divisional Manager for Planning and Economy, and I think I have those in the right order. Thank you. William, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to remind the panel, first of all, this is the second panel at which the microbusiness grant scheme for this year will be considered. Should all grants be awarded, then all funding will be committed for this round of the scheme. Now, there's a couple of points I'd just like to note from the report itself. Firstly, with regards to the accompanying papers, you will have seen that a table noting applications not being awarded for funding was circulated earlier today. And I do hope you've had a chance to review these also. I'd just like to highlight an incorrect figure in paragraph 4. There are only 15 applications not recommended for funding. The other totals do, however, remain correct. This was just due to a duplicate application which has since been removed. Furthermore, as noted in paragraph 9, officers mentioned that an update will be given with regards to the total funding available. And with that in mind, we're able to confirm that we're confident that there is sufficient funding to award all grants noted in the recommendations annex of this report. That's being funded by unspent funding from previous grant rounds.
Thank you.
With regards to the applications themselves, I'd just like to highlight 2 grants which we have recommended for part funding. These are due to items within their applications not being eligible for funding under this scheme, for instance, direct staffing costs. In addition to those 2 grants, I'd just like to make the panel aware of one further application, the Elegant Feast. There's one item on their application owing to insurance costs. Officers has since attributed this to a business as usual cost, and with the panel's permission, would like to recommend a lower award of 670 with this item removed from the application.
I'm sorry, which application is that?
So it is the Elegant Feast.
Okay, thank you.
So just a couple more things. First of all, due to the sort of oversubscribed nature of the scheme, officers made the decision to not recommend those applications whereby the business had received funding from either the first round of the COVID-19 recovery grant scheme and via last year's microbusiness grant scheme. And then just finally, I'd just like to make the panel aware that officers will be preparing a end of project report for a later meeting of the panel, which is in order to summarise those grants awarded and the impact of the scheme both this year and via last year's funding. If I don't have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Before we get into the questions, I do want to just highlight the fact that the graph showing the distribution of grants across the district was very helpful at the top of page 20. And it was interesting to see the numbers of applications from Haywards Heath, Burgess Hill and East Grinstead. And those coming in from East Grinstead were a smaller number, which is often the case, and something that has long concerned me. And I know that Councillor Hillier is also concerned about that because we have spoken about it. And the grant funding rounds are always well publicised in all 3 towns and the villages. And I just wonder if there is anything more that could be done, either through the business associations or in other ways to highlight these grants. Councillor Hillier, do you wish to say anything about that?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I thoroughly endorse everything you say. Thank you. And that element of the way the report is drawn up is really helpful. So thank you very much to officers. And yes, we have discussed the business, the East Grinstead aspect. And yeah, it is a little perplexing. The Business Association engages extremely well with us, and they've held grants events to drum up support and make sure they're widely known about. So it's difficult to know what more can be done. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I speak with them regularly, as do yourselves, and I'm sure if they have any suggestions, they'll come to us. But I do feel that the council has done its best to spread the word as wide as possible.
If I were to be a glass 3/4 full person, I may say that the East Grinstead businesses are doing so well that they don't need a grant. But I fear that that is not the case, unfortunately, because I think businesses right across the district are working very hard in these challenging times. I think just being aware of that, and in all our discussions with all 3 business associations, we need to promote the existence of grants as strongly as we possibly can. And for the interest of those people who may be listening, I just want to reassure that payment is only made on submission of invoices. So no money is sent out until work is actually done and invoices are submitted. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a few questions. Actually, Mr. Hawkins has already answered one, because I was going to bring up the query about the insurance. So thank you for that. The other two are a bit more, and if I could just say to colleagues, I have kind of had a conversation about these applications and the decisions with officers outside of the meeting, and I was very impressed with the due diligence that they've carried out in terms. And I hope I'm not embarrassing them, but I think as Cabinet College, we're aware of the huge pressure this small team's under, being given a fantastic amount of support to the grants process, the national, the government's grants, the COVID stuff, as well as looking ahead and starting thinking about future policies. So thank you very much to Sally and your team for the diligence that you've gone through these, the amount of effort you've put in, particularly in these current circumstances. I've got 2 questions, if I may. First of all, there's quite a few applications, there's a number of applications that have scored comfortably less than 50% on the scoring, but they've still been put through, recommended for acceptance. So I think I'd find it helpful to have a comment on that as to why you felt that was appropriate. Thank you very much. And then the other one, again, it's a bit more general. Well, excuse me, sorry. There's a few bids in here that relate to improvement to premises. So I guess the first thing is, obviously, as part of your diligence, we're confident that they're actually commercial premises and they're not investing in their own homes. But also, I wonder if you could talk about where the award of our grants sit within the kind of whether these businesses are complying with various other regulations. So I'm aware of one where there is thinking that perhaps they are carrying out some physical works that might not or might require a planning consent. So I want to put this in general terms, is where, how much checks do we do in terms of, are these businesses in any default, be it with environmental health or with planning, etc.? Does that form part of the process before we actually write the check when they submit their invoice? So hopefully that question makes sense, and that's all I have for the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. Just in terms of different departments within the organisation speaking with one another, I can confirm that they do. And in a briefing that I had this morning, I raised that particular issue about a few other things that go on within my portfolio. And there are very definitely conversations that do take place. But I will ask Sally Blomfield to answer first and then hand over to William Hawkins to complete their answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Absolutely right. We have very regular meetings with colleagues in our other departments, but I think it's still a really important question that Councillor Hillier has posed, And what we propose to do is, in any letter of award, make clear that those who are getting the award are in full, have full benefit of all the necessary permissions they require, be that planning, licensing, or in fact permissions from their landowner if they're a tenant of the property. So thank you very much. We can do that. I think there was another part to your question as well, though, Councillor Hillier, wasn't there, rather than just the permissions?
The other question was about the applications that have scored less than 50%.
If I may start, Chair, and then I'll hand over to Will. I think it's really important to understand that there's two parts to the assessment process: those that meet the qualifying criteria. All those that are listed in Appendix A did meet the qualifying criteria, and that's that they're micro businesses registered within Mid Sussex. Those that are on Appendix B didn't meet the qualifying criteria. So they've got through the first hurdle to get onto Appendix A, and then really the score is about whether they met any of the other criteria in terms of the benefit that this award would bring. So it wasn't a case necessarily of if they scored 100% or even necessarily 10%. They just had to ensure that they met one or more of those criteria, and these did. They all did. I don't know, Chair, if Will needs to add anything more, but thank you.
Thank you. Will, is there anything else that you wish to add to that comprehensive answer?
No, nothing with regards to the scores, other than to say that obviously the number there is to explain to the panel how many of the criteria they meet and the sort of level of detail they're provided with regards to that. I know Councillor Hillier also asked about how confident are we with regards to paying monies to businesses, whether they have commercial or otherwise premises. Just in regards to that, as a team, we take comfort in the fact, as Councillor Webster mentioned, on paying on receipt of invoice. So that gives our team the ability to see precisely what expense the business has undertaken, allow us to sort of discern that there. In addition to these desk-based due diligence checks we've undertaken separately.
Good, thank you, Will. And it's also very useful to have the criteria and measuring matrix attached to the papers for the meeting as well. Councillor Hillier, which were the three that you declared an interest in? It was Fresh Display Limited, the Karuna Centre, and? Sorry, you muted.
Sorry, Chairman, thank you. It was the Karuna Centre.
Yeah.
I think it's called Kellen Collins, I think was the name of the business. And then the other one
on page
was,
26.
Thank you. And the other one was no, it's not that one. It was the one involving Ms. Wickrachi, coaching with Nasanka.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Councillor Belsey, what did you say?
No, I was saying I could remember it was Kellen Collins, that was all.
Okay. So if there are no further questions, can we recommend these? Sorry.
Can I ask a question, Councillor Webb, Chairman? Sorry.
Certainly.
Yeah, no, so I just had a couple of questions. So, sorry, I put the raise, I didn't know which raise hand. So no, I was just going to thank officers for the report. That was very helpful. And they confirmed the points about, obviously, we've just gone beyond the existing funding allocated. And obviously, we've now received the appended, the ones that weren't recommended for grants. I had a similar question to Councillor Hillier, just to differentiate. Obviously, some of the scores are relatively low, but I think Sally Blomfield has just explained that they needed to pass the thresholds of qualifying criteria, and then it's really just to what extent they then sort of shoot over the bar. But if I may, I just to challenge that a little, I only just read, unfortunately, just now the unsuccessful applications, and of the unsuccessful ones, and again, it's just a little point for the officers. So, Will, I know you quite often put things down in East Grinstead, and some of them are. A couple of them have been Ashurst Wood, and I noticed in the no grant recommendations, there's one for East Grinstead, which is actually in Ashurst Wood, called Hypertune, which is something that has crossed my radar, and I think Councillor Webster's, just from a noise perspective in Ashurst Wood, in that it is a vehicle repair centre, a very modern sort of where they fine tune high performance engines, and it's quite noisy. And so I would have thought, and I can see it's been recommended for refusal. Whilst on one hand, I sympathise with residents for the noise that's been generated by this business. I've met the business owners as well, and they've been working incredibly hard to try to mitigate the noise. And so and that's what, as a council, we've asked them to do. And so I suppose I'm a bit disappointed that when they've come forward with a grant application to help minimise the noise, which I would say would meet the criteria for grants of improving business premises, and it would also, I think, improve business productivity, that we're not recommending them for a grant, despite the fact that they are clearly within the district. And so I struggle to see how that can't meet what is quite a low threshold if we're saying that they only need to do that, compared to a couple of the items that we've awarded criteria of only 2 out of 3 I can see, and the first one's 2 out of 6. I mean, I just would be quite grateful to understand if it really was as simple as what Sally said, that they've just got to be in the district and sort of demonstrate what Sally made was quite a low bar as to how a business which is trying to really improve it sort of, and not affect residents, how that could possibly not qualify, but yet other ones do. So I'd be just grateful for some thoughts in that respect.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Sally, do you have any comment on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. That's Will, because it's a specific business.
Right. Will?
Yes, so with regards to the specific business and I suppose our grant criteria, I think in the case of this one, myself and the team didn't feel like the application itself met the overall grant criteria of attributing to business growth. I suppose there's a line between sort of business as usual costs and business growth. So while it may sort of hit sort of the specific criteria, as I say, myself and officers didn't feel like it hit that overall business growth element as strongly as other applications, specifically when these noise complaints were mentioned in their application itself.
So the noise complaints were mentioned within the application, and they asked for funding specifically for mitigation of the noise, rather than to employ additional staff or to, for example, increase advertising to bring in more business. That's what you're saying? Yes.
I mean, while obviously business premises improvements is one of our criteria, we didn't feel like the justification of answering specific complaints was enough to contribute to business growth.
Mm. 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 Will, how much did they actually apply for, and was it within the criteria that were set for the grant program?
So the grant funding was for £2,000, so the maximum of this scheme.
Okay, so it was for £2,000, and if they were not to achieve that grant, if they were to not receive that grant, it would have an impact on their ability to do business. Is that the point that you are making, Councillor Belsey? That I know personally that they have put in a lot of effort in trying to mitigate the noise and so on, and it would impact materially on their business if they didn't get that grant. Councillor Belsey, you muted.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, you're right, and I think they have they've put in a significant amount of money themselves to try to do that mitigation. I suspect they've put in, from what I understand, more than £20,000 worth of costs. I think the problem they have is that they are not allowed to do business if their noise levels get above a certain, registered in other neighbours' houses, go above a certain decibel level, and so they have been spending whatever money they've got, as far as I'm aware, to put soundproofing in to try to keep it below those levels. So I don't know whether that £2,000 itself will make the difference, but I know that a significant amount of money is required or they have invested a significant amount of money to try to make the business able to operate at reasonable hours. As I said, I don't know what the tipping point is, but I think I would have been inclined to recognise the work that the business have put in to try to satisfy and working with local residents, and I would have thought for them that this would represent a business improvement for the premises, and it would improve it will certainly improve their productivity, because they're not actually allowed to work without actually having made it more soundproofed. So I can see both ways. Don't get me wrong. I can understand that residents are sort of don't all welcome that business there either. So it's a double-edged sword. But from a purely business perspective, I don't really know what more they could do to try to improve their business. And to me, it would look like that's what they've sought to do.
Councillor Belsey, I think you've pushed it over the tipping point with me. So I would support you in awarding that money. Councillor Hillier, would you support awarding that business £2,000 to assist them?
I think Councillor Belsey yourself made a very good case. I'd just be interested if William Hawkins has any kind of comments to come back on John's comments, because obviously you're the one that's done the due diligence and spoken with them. I'd like to invite him to have that opportunity first, if I may, Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, before I go to Will, Franco, could we have your opinion, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I think that the issue here is growth. That is the word that you need to link into. These grants are to help businesses to grow and to reach out to new audiences and new businesses, etc. The issue with this garage is this is to address an ongoing problem but it won't necessarily need to grow. So I think that's what William was trying to hook in and to say why this business in particular was not felt to have met that criteria. I just thought I'd add that, Chairman.
Thank you, Franco. That's even well. It's very helpful to have that grounding, but it doesn't help my argument. Will, would you like to comment, please?
Yes, I think this obviously it's a complex issue on this one, and it may have fallen by the wayside given the fact that we were so oversubscribed in this year's round of the scheme. With the panel's permission, if it weren't awarded, we could have further conversations with them and bring them back to a later panel with more information on that. But I'll leave that up to yourself, Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, based on Franca's pulling us back into line with the legal opinion, I would suggest that would be a better option to go down. That we could ask you could have further conversations with them about how this money would be used to improve the business prospects, whilst of course they still have to address the noise issues and achieve a satisfactory outcome for near neighbours and so on. Is that acceptable, colleagues? Councillor Belsey.
Yes, well, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, that is acceptable. I think that sounds a very elegant way forward. I mean, because I would otherwise argue that anything is growth if you're not able to work at the moment because of the noise levels. So I would challenge that existing argument, but I think it'll be much better if now our third member is alerted to the situation. It would be, I think, nice to have to just have a little bit more detail so that we can properly consider it, because these are important decisions. I know we take all 46, but I know Will puts a lot of work in, Frank, yourself, and Councillor Hillier. You know, we appreciate this is taxpayers' money, and every decision we make, we really want to make sure is the right decision. I know, regardless of the sum and regardless of the business and where it is. So I think that would be a great suggestion, Chairman, to have it.
Okay, so subject to that application and the three that Councillor Hillier has already flagged up that he has an interest in, can we vote in agreement of the recommendation that is put before us? And if you agree, would you raise your electronic hand, please? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. And then Councillor Belsey, can we go back to the three that Councillor Hillier has declared an interest in, being Fresh Display, the Corona Centre, and coaching with Nisanka? Are we in agreement on those three, Councillor Belsey? And you've just disappeared off the screen at a crucial point. So we'll wait for Councillor Belsey to reconnect with the stars, and we'll have that vote again. And there is Councillor Belsey.
I hadn't declared an interest.
No. And you and I were about to vote on those three. So if you approve, would you raise your hand, please?
I'm raising it electronically, sorry.
Excellent, thank you. Those three are agreed. Gentlemen, I think that all that remains for me to do is to close the meeting at 16:38 and to thank Sally and William and Franca, and of course the people behind the scenes who make the meeting happen technologically and record the meeting, Aidan and Alison. Thank you very much for your efforts, and Alexander as well. Thank you, and have a pleasant evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You too.